This is the Inquisitive Minds Podcast.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to the Inquisitive Minds Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Smith. Joining me today, my guest has been the bridge between heaven and earth in over 10,000 group and individual readings. She has been the subject of newspaper articles, spoken on both radio and TV, and is the author of 4 books on mediumship and healing. She has also published articles on spiritual and metaphysical subjects and taught numerous workshops at Lilydale, New York, the largest U.S. center for spiritualism. She has also produced audio programs that help people with spiritual development and teaches classes in intuition, mediumship, and healing. Welcome to the podcast, Carole Obley.
Hi, Johnny.
Carole.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for coming on. Now, today we're going to focus mostly on your new book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, Life Teachings from the Spirit World. But before we do that, do you mind giving us a little bit how you got started when you first discovered you were a medium?
Unlike a lot of famous mediums, I wasn't aware of my abilities until I was in my mid-30s. And that came about through a catastrophe, really, and it was a fire. And I've written about that in my first 2 books. I wrote about that. And I was running a business, and overnight we had an electrical fire, and it burned it to the ground. And it was quite devastating, but I didn't know at the time that was taking me off of the pathway of what I was doing, and it was opening the door to what I'm doing today. So long story short, I began taking classes via an invitation from a friend who is no longer with us. She's in the spirit world. She invited me to a metaphysical center near a small town here where I live. And one thing led to another. And I took a lot of training in hands-on healing and also in mediumship. And so in the late 90s, I started doing readings professionally for people, and everything has grown since then. Unlike a lot of people, perhaps, I didn't have all the strange phenomena or, see deceased relatives when I was a kid. I was actually, and in this book, in Wisdom from the Spirit World, I write about my early experiences and my reactions to death. And I was very afraid of it, especially when my first grandparent died. I had nightmares about seeing my grandma and my grandfather in their caskets. I was traumatized by that. And, of course, at that time, I didn't know that, we really don't die. Our spirit is eternal and goes on. So, but that's where it all began, and relatively later in life for me.
It's fascinating that you mentioned that, because I have a friend that's in his early 30s who just started having some experiences with spirits and paranormal, and he had a lot of questions about, is it something you can develop over time? So I'm going to send him in the direction of your books, and I'm sure he can learn quite a bit. Now, your bio states you've given over 10,000 readings. What are a few of the most compelling messages spirits have imparted through these sessions?
Well, in this book, I write there are 10 themes that I've noticed through all of those sessions and from my case files. And in this book, in contrast, really, from my second and third books, in which I use direct transcripts from readings. They're unembellished. They are real and genuine. This book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, is a bit more of synopsis and composite examples of these lessons that have come through, or teachings One of them is, and this sounds kind of odd, but the first lesson is that there is an afterlife. And so I really wanted to, say that it seems kind of strange that they would bring that through, but yet they want people here to know, especially family members and friends, that they're not deceased, that there's no reason really to be sad other than grieving their physical loss, that they're really very much alive in a place that is quite similar to where you and I live, and that's here in the physical world.
Now, can you elaborate on that a little bit? The afterlife and the similarities between the plane of existence we are on.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard the expression "as above, so below."
Yes.
That is sort of a metaphysical, saying, if you will, and it is true. And what that means is that it means a couple of things. What we think about, what we, have in our minds is what we're going to see here. And so we create everything through thought. Now, the spirit world, it also means that the spirit world is a mirror of just about anything that you can think of that exists here on the earth plane also exists there. And I've personally seen that. I've been very blessed.
Okay, that's fascinating.
I'm extremely grateful to have the ability that I do. And I'm very grateful and gracious to use it with the utmost integrity and ethics to help people. So what I've seen is that, things that we do here, for example, hobbies, there's been readings I've done in which people have come through and say that the guy was a fisherman or he was an outdoorsman. Sometimes I'll see that person engaged in those hobbies on the other side.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, they're giving validation of what they did here in physical life, but also they want their family and friends to know that they continue on in the spirit world.
So not only is there not a spirit world, but they're also not tormented or wandering around. They're having some type of purpose.
100%. And
Okay.
I will tell you that spiritual growth and spiritual evolution continues no matter where we are. So when we're in the spirit world, we don't just sit around on the clouds and play harps, with
Yeah.
we are continuing our growth and we are continuing the work. Sometimes people continue on with what they were doing here. For example, someone who is a teacher here, oftentimes I will see them doing teaching without any knowledge on my part that they were a teacher when they were here. I'll see them doing teaching in the spirit world. Someone who was a doctor or a nurse that was here on the physical plane, I will see them continuing on with helping on those same lines in the spirit world. So anything that that we do here. Oh, and by the way, the consciousness that we left the earth with when we died is where we will go in the spirit world. And so there is that's through a natural law, and that law is the law of attraction. So it matches our thoughts that we left here with, and so we will go to a corresponding level of consciousness in the spirit world as well. And so that being said, there are realms of relative darkness,
Okay.
and that just means more of a dense type of energy, and those are closer in vibration to the earth. And the higher up that you go, that there is a clarity and a warmth, and those are called the summer lands. In some of the old spiritualist doctrines, they call them the summer lands because it's always summer there. The sun is always shining. It's always warm. There's many beautiful flowers and meadows and forests. And by the way, Johnny, I've done a lot of readings in which pets come through too.
I had a friend of mine, a former coworker, message me this morning because I reach out to people about what kind of questions they would ask my upcoming guests. And she asked if pets ever cross over because she recently lost her cat. Um, any messages as far as pet owners that have lost a pet?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that because they are also a spark of God or the divine, they don't die either. Of course, I think most people understand that. But I can tell you that a lot of times I see them with people that they once knew and loved here on earth that are now in spirit. For
Oh,
example, somebody's father, somebody's mother, maybe even a grandparent that's taking care of them in the spirit world. And if they left with a lot of things wrong with their physical body, they are reinvented and transformed, just
I've
like
always wondered that.
yeah, and I see them sometimes as puppies. If it's a dog or a cat, it might show up as a kitten. And so it means that we're reinvented. We can be in these perfect spirit bodies when we go over back into our natural home.
Well, that's a beautiful thought, and I'm sure very comforting for quite a few of us who have lost a dear pet over time. Now, your new book, Wisdom from the Spirit World: Life Teachings on Love, Forgiveness, Purpose, and Finding Peace. What do those in the spirit have to teach us about that?
Well, as I mentioned, there are 10 lessons, and I know we're not going to have time to go through all of those. But there are definitely things that I've read in which there's, the readings that I've done for people, there's been these repeating themes. One of them is, and a lot of the interviews I've done, people have commented on this particular lesson, and it is our wounds do not diminish the light within. So what that means is no matter what challenge we're going through, whatever that might be, whether it's addiction, whether, we came from a very difficult childhood, that we had abuse, or any challenges that we've had, mistakes, so-called, I put them in quotes,
Yeah,
mistakes that we've made. Those are nothing that can diminish or hold power over us. They are opportunities to grow and to learn.
I
And
love that message.
yeah,
I absolutely love that message.
I've made many, many mistakes in my life. And I'm sure that you have, we all have. We
Oh,
wouldn't,
I have quite a few mistakes.
I,
I've spent years on mistakes.
I, so did I. And I write very honestly and openly. If there's one thing about me, I want people to know that I understand that, and I've walked down that pathway. I've recovered from serious addictions. I was highly addicted to alcohol in my 20s. I
It's a
went
rough battle.
I went through 12 step. I haven't drank in over 35 years at this point. And I was really headed on a pathway of destruction. So
Go
really,
ahead.
today, when I look at that, and this is what that chapter is really about, the power that the past has over us is only what we give it. We are always in control of choice. And in any given moment, whether it's you, me, anybody of relative importance, of notoriety, or somebody on the street, what we all have in common is number one, we are all spirit. Number two, we have right here, right now. That's all we have. And if we stay stuck in the past, or if we are projecting through anxiety into the future, we're losing the opportunity of right now. So that's what I really want to people to understand. And the spirit people come through with that many, many times. And they will say, I want you to know that no matter what you've gone through, our love for you, and it's the family communicating to the loved one here, that we still love you, and you can grow and learn through these wounds that we
Anybody that knows me in my personal life knows that's a message I stand by and live for every day. Just to put my vulnerabilities out there. I'm not sure if any listeners know, but I'm a convicted felon. Spent some time in and out of prisons. I wasn't always the best person, but I don't let my past determine who I am today. So that bringing that on this podcast is such a beautiful message. I can't agree with more. I do have a question about your readings. Are they emotionally taxing? Does it take something out of you when you do readings?
I know my limits, and I am not an assembly line medium. My primary intent is to be a conduit of healing, and that's not coming from me. It's not the little me. I always say there's the little me and there's the big me, and the same with any human being. We have this thing called ego or personality, which is fine. I think in a lot of New Age literature or teachings, the ego has become demonized, and it should not be demonized. It is a very necessary part of us that we need here to navigate in the physical realm. Do I get tired? Yes. If I overtax my faculties, absolutely. And it does take some energy from the medium to, spirit will use that energy to communicate. And it's from this energy center in the body that's in the abdominal area, and that's called
Okay.
the solar plexus.
Now, these lessons that you said what the spirits like to teach us about love and healing, how is this information useful to people? How would you like them to digest what the spirits have to tell you?
Well, the lessons, and that's the reason why I wrote this particular book, is to really get this higher perspective. Once we leave this physical plane, once we leave here, what happens? What do we look at? What is this thing called life really about? And so that's really what the motivating factor for this book. And for people to understand that they are extremely powerful beyond limits. And if we can realize that and use the power of choice, and by the way, that's another one of the lessons. The power of choice determines the quality of our life. The choices that we make, we're always responsible for. There's always this thing called
Absolutely.
personal responsibility. So I wanted people to really understand what this higher perspective is from those in spirit when they look back on their life. What really mattered? What is really the core of this thing called life? And it's not about money. It's not about chasing notoriety. It's not about things. And those are not to be, again, devalued, but everything should be in balance. And
My
so,
Lord, Carole, I can't say how much I love the message you're providing and the positive encouragement behind everything. I love it. In the book, you write about soul maps and karmic lessons. Can you explain these and how do they manifest in our lives?
yeah, well, the soul maps are basically an internal navigation system, and that's within all of us, and it's called intuition. And the soul, which is the director of our life, if we allow it to be. And by the way, in the third section, I have a chapter called Merging the Personality with the Soul and combining those two things. So a soul map is that internal navigation system using the intuition, and it's a compass. It's a compass which provides direction for our life. Now, the karmic things, and I write a lot in this book, as in my previous books, on these things called the Akashic files. The Akashic
Yes.
files, or the Akashic records, are these things that um, are everything that we've done since the beginning of time.
Well, how do they influence our life?
Well, because we actually plan things and lessons before we come into physical form. And so
Oh,
these things, and I call them, we kind of call them codes, these codes that will go off when the timing is right. Um, and we're drawn to certain people, to certain pathways, and we might be coming together. There are things called soul agreements. I wrote about those in the book as well, that we make these before we're born. And, they're for purpose of spiritual evolution. And that is the only reason why you and I are here. And I mean here in a physical lifetime. Or
now does that mean everything is pre-planned?
I say that yes. However, there is the element of free will, which is always operating. So
Hmm.
let me elaborate on that so that people don't, so that they can really understand it. Say that I am in my spirit form and I'm planning to come into physical form. That timing is right for me to do that. And I look at, what do I still need more experience with? What are the lessons? What are the soul qualities that I need to embrace more or to learn more about? And if we take the quality of, say, compassion, for example,
Okay.
and I look at that and I go, I really need some more experience with compassion. So I write that into my Akashic file, and that's sort of my planner. I call them in my books blueprints, because
Okay.
a blueprint is more open ended.
So
So,
when you write that in your file and you enter into a physical form, the general theme of your life will be increasing that emotion.
yes, well, I'll be drawn to situations where I might be born into a family um, that, for example, I can choose to learn compassion in different ways. I might be born into a family in which I'm highly abused, and I have to overcome that in order to develop self compassion and then compassion and forgiveness. Say that I wrote forgiveness into my file. I might have to go through those lessons of forgiveness with people who were highly abusive to me. Um, on the other hand, I could choose to learn compassion through working with, mentally challenged children. I could learn it through working with abused and abandoned animals. I can work with the elderly. That's the wiggle room. That's the free will that comes in with these things that are planned ahead of time.
I can relate to that. It took the first 30 years of my life for me to fully understand and develop what compassion was. Um, but once I got through that, boy, oh boy, am I a compassionate fella. So I can understand that. Now, um, one of the lessons you write about, or excuse me, I'm sorry, the theme of forgiveness and its role in spiritual growth is woven throughout this book. You know, can you explain why that's vital?
Yeah, I call it the cornerstone of healing. And I think that a lot of people misunderstand what forgiveness really means. So, in a spiritual sense, and I dedicate a lot of time in this book to talking about, writing about forgiveness. What it really means is to a release of the past. And it's a conscious decision to not carry the past with us. So in that regard, it doesn't mean, see, here's where people get messed up. They think that forgiveness means, hey, I'm going to okay what my father did to me, when I was a child. I'm going to okay someone who, demeans me, who beat me up, whatever it might be. It doesn't really mean that. What it means is, in a sense, it means that, but what it really is a conscious decision to be free of all of the lower emotions and thoughts that accompany hostility, unforgiveness, hatred, um, jealousy, all of that kind of stuff. And because really, when we carry that stuff, we're poisoning ourself.
I agree completely.
And so forgiveness is a conscious decision that I am in this moment right now, and I'm making a decision to release my past. And so that's a lesson that I personally have had to learn. And actually, talk about synchronicity or meaningful coincidence. I tuned into a spiritual service this morning, and guess what the topic was? Forgiveness. And so I felt, okay, I know I have an interview today, and I'm, maybe this is going to coincide with the interview, and here it is. So
yeah, when you walk around, that's a burden. When you have all that hurt you're carrying with you from your past, it's quite a burden, and it's not always easy to learn to forgive. Now, would you say it's easier in the spirit world to learn to forgive, or in the plane we're in now?
that's an interesting question, and I'm glad that you asked it. Um, I really don't know which would be easier, but I will tell you this. Through many, many readings, there have been people, the communicating spirit, who has come through in the session and extended an apology, and sometimes on bended knee,
Oh,
I have seen this, begging that sitter or the receiver of the reading for forgiveness, and saying, I realize now the damage that I did to you or to others. And that's a true story. I remember one time I was doing a group. I do a lot of gallery mediumship readings. And there was about 20 or 25 people there. And there was a woman there, and I tuned in with her. And I saw a man standing behind her, and he had a belt. He had a belt. And I got this whole thing put through clairsentience, which are feelings that spirit will bring. And he had been very abusive, and it was this woman's father in spirit. So in order to preserve her dignity in the group setting, I told her to see me afterwards. And when she did, I said, I want to tell you, your dad was coming through. He was showing me he used to use a belt. He was highly abusive, all this kind of stuff. And I said, he is on bended knee asking for your forgiveness because he sees how he affected you detrimentally. And she knew exactly what I was talking about because it was true, that her dad had been that way. And so it was an important part of her own healing journey to be able to release this painful past, and to bring all of her energy into the present moment in order to heal.
That's beautiful that you're able to assist individuals with this process. Really beautiful. One of the lessons that you write about is the bond of love being eternal and indestructible by death. Why is that important for people to know? And furthermore, how does that knowledge help those who are grieving with the loss of a loved one?
Well, what you and I are made of is love. And I don't mean that like, romantic love. What I mean is that spirit or the divine essence. And I don't conceive of spirit the way religion does. It's the eternal, the creator,
Okay.
which is neither masculine, feminine, any of that. It's so huge. Our minds can't even grasp what that is. But people need to understand that love it can never be destroyed, because it is the essence itself of the divine. And so it assuredly survives death. It is eternal. This physical body is not going to survive. We know that. We know that. Anything here that you see on the physical plane will pass. It's simply a matter of time.
Absolutely.
Buildings crumble. Things are decompose.
Societies fall.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, anything here is subject to change. The spirit world is very different in that it's a place made of thought. But I can tell you that what we do here, we take with us. And so, the love and the service that we give here, which is an extension of the divine being that you are, that I am, that anyone is. So whatever we give to others, we're also giving to ourselves. And that is love. That is love. It is because it is a purity that is the divine. And so I really wanted to have people understand that it's useful because people can then realize, you know, I miss, holding my mother. I miss calling my father. I miss my child. I miss my spouse. I miss my pet. But I know because they're eternal that they're still with me. And
To interject, a lot of people only feel that way too when it's too late. I miss my calling my mother or that type of thing. I became a widower at 30. And from my experience, call your mother, call your aunt, call your father, whoever you miss or you will miss talking to, call them. Just say hello. Just don't miss opportunities to make memories with those people now. I just always feel like it's important to say, don't wait till it's too late. Always spend time with your loved ones because that's more important than any currency you could ever get.
yes, that is a very, very important message. Anyone who's gone through any sort of significant loss, and especially at a younger age, or the loss of a child, which is highly traumatic for people, will tell you that, and I'll tell you too, I do not censor or filter my readings. Whatever comes through, I will give to that person. Now, I'm always working with healing. However, there are spirits who come through with regrets, and they'll say, I wish I would have spent more time with my spouse. I wish I wouldn't have been working so much. I have never heard a spirit come through and say, gee, I wish I would have earned more money. I wish I would have had a big palace for a house. None of them ever say that. It's all about the service they give, that they gave, the love that they had, the time they spent with their families, their children, all of that. So, I think that with you, that's an important message to get out to people because you're a relatively younger man to have lost a spouse, but it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, you never know. You never know when it's going to happen.
That's true.
You dedicate an entire chapter to the power of choice in our lives and how it shapes our experiences. What does the spirit world have to say about that?
Well, I alluded to this a little bit earlier in saying the power of choice determines the quality of our life. So what people have to understand, and the spirit world has brought this through countless times. Number one, they can't, even though they're on a higher plane, they can't make decisions for us. They can't tell us what to do. The angels can't do that. Spirit guides can't do that. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna can't tell us what to do. We have free will. So and whatever choice we make, here's all you need to know: is the choice I'm making in alignment with my soul's intention, or is it in alignment with my ego or my personality? And
that is a great way to put it.
Demonizing the personality at all, but many times, as you and I well know, the personality makes choices from a very limited perspective,
Mm-hmm.
kind of from an egocentric perspective, whereas the soul looks at a much, much broader perspective in life. So
Yeah.
that's all you need to know is my choice coming from the little me, or is it coming from the big me?
That's a beautiful way to put it too, as far as making decisions. Does it align with my soul? I respect that very much. Um, you spoke on this a little bit earlier. One of the lessons you share in the book is our wounds do not diminish the light within. Do you think you could elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. One of the things I wrote about in this book, there's um, one of the longer readings that I spent time on was a mother who had lost her son from opioid addiction. And, I've done a lot of readings for people who have lost not only children from the opioid crisis, but also someone that, people who have lost a spouse, a girlfriend, a boyfriend from it, and so that's an example of wounding that's there. This particular example and story that I gave in the book, the woman was stuck in that trap of immense grief. She had guilt going on. I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough to help my son. You know, she was very confused. She was angry. She had all of these emotions running through her at her son's death from drugs. And so he came through in the reading and talked about, I'm the one who made that choice. I see now that that was a personal choice that I made. However, I'm over here and I'm receiving counseling. And yes, we do receive counseling in the spirit world. I can tell you 100%. I've seen it directly that there are counselors and healers there. And so this young guy, the son who passed from this, he had made that choice, but yet there was an opportunity in this tragedy of this young person dying from an overdose, an opportunity for both his soul and his mother and the family to awaken in some way. There had been addiction in that family. It was alcoholism. It doesn't matter the nature of what the substance is.
Mm-hmm.
Addiction it comes in many different forms. So this was an opportunity for the family to evolve and to help other people too who have lost someone dear to them from drugs. So I use that example because I did a lot. I've done a lot of readings for people who have lost people from drug overdoses.
That's fascinating. And you know what? We here at Inquisitive Minds are we think mental health is important. Um, and struggles with addiction, don't be ashamed. We've all done things. Please reach out. There's help out there. With that in mind, also mental health. You write about awakening the practices of mindfulness through a bout of severe anxiety. Um, how has this practice changed your perspective?
Yeah, and that was only a couple of years ago. All my life, I had, even as a child, I had problems with anxiety, and then I started having panic attacks, and those are very debilitating panic attacks. So the one that I had a couple of years ago that nearly drove me over the edge, I sought out counseling, therapy. And I was given a gift. It was around Christmas time 2 years ago. And I was given a gift of a book on mindfulness, and it's an 8-week program. And there are meditations that accompany it. They're very brief, but they're very powerful. And so I started doing those in addition to everything else I was doing, because when you have a problem like that, you really have to take a lot of different angles and combine different things in order to recover. So, in addition to the psychological counseling and so forth, and some medication that I was given as well to pull me out of that. I was doing this mindfulness program, and I can tell you that it's changed the very fabric of my life. Mindfulness is very simple. A child can do it. Anyone can do it. You don't have to be an experienced meditator. It's extremely useful and very helpful. And what it does is it pulls you into, by focusing on your breath, it
Okay.
puts you into the present moment. And all you do is you put all of your attention on your breath and you follow the breath as it comes into the body and then as it exits. And so what that does is it pulls you away from the past and away from the future into right here and right now, because the breath is always recirculating. It's always in the present moment. And so it's a very effective vehicle to eliminate anxiety, which is always future based, because we're anxious about what's going to happen, what's going to come tomorrow, what's going to come next week. And especially now with what's going on in collective consciousness, there's many, many people who are very anxiety ridden.
Oh, there's so much anxiety out there. There's so many things that are unknown in the world right now about our immediate futures, about tomorrow.
Yes. And so everybody right now can really benefit from a very simple practice. It doesn't cost any money. I mean, you can do it wherever you're at. You don't need any special props. And allowing that loop, some people call it the monkey mind. It's always going. It's always playing. It's always spinning. But calming that and allowing yourself to be present. And that helped me immensely. And I highly recommend mindfulness to anyone who is suffering with anxiety.
Now, what have your readings revealed about life's purpose? Do clients, spirit, loved ones give insight on their purpose?
Yes. Sometimes when people say the word purpose, they're talking about a career. And so I call that a secondary purpose. The primary purpose is always, it's what you and I are doing right now. We are meeting our purpose. Why? Because we're expressing spirit. And so, purpose doesn't have to be some lofty goal or ideal, and a big important person or whatever it might be. Everything is in divine purpose. Nature is in purpose. And by the way, I just want to tell listeners too that if you want to understand spirit and higher mind, turn to nature, because nature, it has no ego. It exists always in the present moment, and it follows the natural cycles. So, but yeah, purpose is the primary purpose is emanating spirit. The secondary purpose is in what direction am I going to emanate spirit? So sometimes people say, okay, that's through a particular career pathway. It could also be through service work or volunteer work. You are meeting purpose. You're bringing information through your podcast to people who are open to that. So everything has value. Everything has purpose here. Again, spirit can't really tell us what to do. But here's what I would say to people. What brings you joy? Here's a clue to your purpose. What brings you joy? What would you do if you don't earn 1 cent for it, but you are so in the moment and so joyful doing it? That is a clue to your purpose.
Carole, I'm so surprised that you said that, because this absolutely is my purpose. Because I lose money doing this, but it's what I love to do, and it just brings me so much joy. So not only thank you for expressing that, but also again, thank you for coming on. And another thing I wanted to touch on, because I know a lot of us struggle with the death of a loved one. When you said look to nature, because nature is natural and it's in the moment. Death is also part of nature, and like you've expressed here, it's not the end. So take some solace in that if you guys can. Now, another topic you discuss is how we can merge our unique personality with our soul's awareness to offer our contribution to the world. Can you explain how one does this?
Yeah, well, in the book, I go into detail on how to do that. And it's really quite simple in recognizing it. Takes a little bit of focus. But, I connect over the years, and I've been doing readings for um, at least 25 years professionally. And, a long time ago, I started, and that's just in this lifetime. there's been, there's been other lifetimes. Um, but the most common question that I'm asked by people is, what is my purpose in life? That is the most common question. I call it the $1,000,000 question, that people ask in a reading. So it takes a little bit of focus in focusing on writing down what soul qualities you have and what are the unique um, qualities of your personality. And for you, that's going to be different than for me. We all have this unique personality, and that's what makes us the individual who we are. Now, on a soul level, we're all the same. We're all made of that divine essence. Okay. And I think, especially now, we all need that simple truth that underneath this skin, underneath this body, we are spirit. That's what we are. We're not what our appearance is. So
That could heal the world if people took that in.
I'm sorry, what?
That could heal the world if people accepted that underneath
Yeah.
all this, we're all souls.
Well, we get diverted by what we see. We get diverted by what we hear. I've fallen into that trap. All of us have fallen into that where we become, I don't think there is a person alive that in some way does not have some sort of prejudice against, it's not just skin color, but anything, because we are a product of what we've seen. And our mind, sees things and makes, comparisons. But the point of this is that we are each a unique individual. And so we can take that with what our soul is telling us or how our soul is telling us that it wants to express. And that for you, for example, is doing these podcasts that you're bringing service and information and healing, hopefully. I don't know who your other guests have been, but
I bring a lot of people on that speak about the obscure. So my hope is a lot of the topics are somewhat taboo and people don't like to talk about them publicly. I'm just letting people know you're not alone. There's people that share the same interests and same things that you wonder about or that you enjoy. You're not alone out there. It's just my way of bridging it. And there's a lot of us that are curious, I think, about topics that are more obscure, that it's hard to just reach out to people if you don't know. So I bring people on that can tell us things that are not ordinary, if that makes some bit of sense.
yeah, well, that's how we learn and grow is through curiosity. So curiosity and being inquisitive um,
Thank you.
is that's how we expand. And I usually get one of two reactions. And when I tell people that I'm a medium, if they ask, I don't go out and advertise myself with being a medium. But when people find that out, usually they go, "That's really cool."
Yeah.
How do you do that? Now there are people who are disparaging. They're like, "Well, that's you're not communicating with anything," and they're very skeptical, and that's okay. I mean, they can have that belief. Um, it's not a belief with me anymore. I have seen it directly, and I always say I don't believe in life after death. I know it. I know it in my heart. So, but yeah, I mean, there is spirit has a place for each of us. Nobody can play your part in the unfolding divine plan. Nobody can play my part. You are the unique part of spirit, who happens to have the name that you have. The same with me, the same with anybody. So each is equally valued and important in the mind of spirit.
Now, I want to touch on something. You said you've had roughly over 25 years of experience doing readings in this lifetime, and we've been touching on how the spirit lives on. What does that mean for reincarnation?
Reincarnation is something that I've personally seen. I never asked to see it. Many years ago, when I was starting to doing readings in a bookstore in Pittsburgh, people would come for what I call the big two, about career and about relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
I would be doing readings for them, and above their right shoulder, I started to see scenes that didn't make any sense as far as their current life. And some of them would be of other cultures. Some of them, the dress that the person was in would be different from another time period. And when I got confident enough, I started relaying what I was seeing to the sitter, and they would say, "That's funny. I've always been drawn to, France, or I've always been drawn to Native American things, or whatever it might be." And I started realizing that what I was seeing was the Akashic record for that person. And so now what I do are these things called Akashic record readings. That's also something I do in addition to mediumship, in which their file is being pulled up, and it's for purposes of helping people work through challenges and correcting.
That's interesting.
It's highly interesting. It's very, very interesting when I do those, and I've done those for many years. But yeah, reincarnation. We play many different roles. This is what I've personally seen. We can be different genders. We come back in different relationships. It's all, what's underneath that is the essence of the soul. So
That's
it
a
doesn't,
beautiful message.
yeah, it
Now,
doesn't matter so much who we are in the physical body.
it's on the inside that really matters.
That's it. That's all you're going to take with you.
Yeah. You mentioned certain resources to build one's spiritual connection. What are these?
One of them is nature that we talked about. And I think now, especially with the anxiety and uncertainty and confusion and fear and anger that's going on right now in collective consciousness, people need to turn to nature more than ever. Take a walk in the woods, take a walk in your backyard, sit with your back against a tree, study a flower. It will bring you into presence and diminish negative feelings. Making friends with non-human beings, such as animals, is another tool. And, animals communicate pure essence because they don't have an ego. And they don't really judge us. They're non-judgmental. So that's another tool. Another one would be, of course, meditation. And, tuning in daily. I don't care if it's for 5 minutes, but realizing and getting away from this thing that people are addicted to, and that's busyness. People are
Very good.
constantly, "Oh, I'm busy, I'm busy." That's a choice to be busy. And I just read a really good article. I'm always reading. And there was an article on people being addicted to busyness. And that can also be an addiction. That people don't get quiet and sit in introspection and really do some self-examination.
That's not a lot. That's
Very
not something
important.
a lot of people seem to think about because there's so much stimulus going on in the world we have today. With we can research the other side of the world in the pocket of our phones today. It's important to get quiet time to center yourself. I completely agree with that. Now, Carole, your company is called Soul Visions LLC, and they can where can the people find you? I guess I should ask.
Well, all of my books are on Amazon and they're also on Kindle, but if people want an autograph copy, You won't get that through Amazon. You'd have to get it through me. And all of my products, I have meditation CDs, and I also have a home study course for intuition with a little workbook that people can use in the privacy and convenience of their own home. It's Soul Visions, and that's plural, soul+visions.net. That's my website. And then my Facebook, if I might, Johnny, give that too.
Oh, yes, by all means.
It's facebook.com/soul medium, SOUL plus the word medium. And I post everything that I do there. And I'll be happy to post this interview as well.
Yeah, those websites, where to find you, will also be in the descriptions, as well as the title of your books. So if you guys want to reach out to Carole, by all means, please do. I have to say thank you so much for coming on. Anything else before we end up here, wrap up here?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people understand that what we're going through right now is sort of a reset, and we've all had our lives disrupted. And there's a lot of negative things right now and a lot of fear. But I will tell you that there is always the opportunity to take the good out of this time as well. It's a great opportunity to make choice, to come together, to try to understand one another. I think we need far less of the anger and division, and much more of the cohesion and a true understanding. And I don't mean to be fluffy about that whole thing and to be, idealistic about it. But I want people to understand that out of the most painful circumstances that we can have in life, no matter what those are, and right now, collectively, the whole world, we're going through this.
Oh, absolutely.
It is an opportunity for awakening to the true power that we have within, and the power to create a better world for everybody. And that includes animals as well. I'm passionate about animals, and I do fundraisers for animals as well. So it's very important that all of us look at this and say, what can I do? What can I personally contribute to make things better? And even if it's small, it's still important, because no one can do that but you.
Beautiful message. Again, Carole, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that's soulvisions.net, SOULVISIONS .net, or facebook.com/soulmedium. You can catch us on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, Chromecast, all that nonsense. Or you can go to inquisitiveminds.com, INQUIZATIVE, minds. Remember, it's spelled a little bit different. Thank you, and tune in next week as I sit down with the guys from One Candle Society as we discuss shadow people. Carole, thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you.